JC, I'll start with what I asked Baker. How important is it that you guys have that cohesion up front? You know, everybody makes a lot about him connecting with the wide receivers and such, but just to have that continuity that you guys have established on the line.
Yeah, I think the more comfortable you are with each other, the more you know just naturally where their feet are going to be, how they're going to interpret looks, how they're going to interpret the calls. It just helps a ton because especially now with fans back in the stands, it'll be a little louder. That communication will be a little more difficult. So having that understanding and having everybody think the same way will just make everything a little easier.
What about your relationship specifically with Baker? Like he kind of joked a little bit at that, you know, you guys can say whatever you want to each other now. There's that comfort. Does that help a lot?
Yeah, no, we you know, since he got here, we've been really good about, you know, during game weeks, sitting down together and talking through looks, making sure he understands, you know, hey, this is how I'm going to start the call. This will be your check off of it. Same way he can tell me, like, this is where I'd like you to start it. If I make this call, get it to this. And that way we just have that communication. And we've been working on that for years now. So the longer we stay together, the easier those communications and that work together is.
How excited are you to see him in year 2 of the same system for the first time?
Yeah, I mean, Baker looks great. I mean, he's really, the last year now, just really, I think, turned a corner, both in his preparation. He's always been a great leader for us, but I think even his leadership has taken a step. And that's what you expect with young guys coming into the league. As they age, all that stuff improves. And the command of the huddle, the command of the offense, the command of the team has just continued to improve year after year. And having that comfort of being in the same system will be good for him.
JC, you know, camp last year, everything was new, everything was different. You weren't even a part of it. So can you quantify at all just how much further you guys ahead are right now than you were a year ago?
It's tough to quantify, but I think even though we're in the same system, it comes down to starting over again. And everything we did last year doesn't matter when we step back out on that field. We have to earn everything back again. So, you know, we talk about expectations and, you know, outside expectations, even if they're positive, they don't give you any boost. They don't spot you 7 points when the game starts. You got to go out there and earn it again. And I think that's the focus of good teams, is being able to year after year come back and realize nothing's given to you. And if you want to be good again, you have to put the work in, and that starts during training camp and rolls through the whole entire season.
Well, the roster's been improved in the offseason, and you know, especially on the defensive side of the ball. You guys aren't going to sneak up on anyone this year. Like the expectations are there. Teams know when they see Cleveland on the schedule that you're a force to be reckoned with. So, you know, from your perspective as players, how cognizant of that in knowing that you're going to get some guys' best shots now?
Yeah, I think we always get everybody's best shots. I mean, this is such a competitive business, individually and as a team. You can never really go into a game thinking you're not going to get somebody's best go at it. So that comes with a preparation, like I said, going into this training camp, knowing that we start back from the ground up, we build back up, we learn everything we need to learn, we come together as a team, and then throughout the season, that work doesn't stop. You know, the work we just put in during training camp doesn't set us up for the entire season. That work needs to continue week after week, and then, you know, hopefully during the playoffs, and as long as we can keep going.
Hey, going back to Baker and that leadership side, have you seen him take more ownership in this offense and become more of a teacher?
Yeah, well, I think it's so important, the communication. When it comes to teaching, is just understanding things the same way, seeing things the same way, and making sure everybody, you know, Baker with us on the offensive line, Baker with his receivers, Baker with running back, tight ends, everybody kind of seeing the offense through the same eyes. And that's when you see teams with a lot of success, is that familiarity and that comfortability with each other.
JC, the offense hit a new level after the bye week last week. And now here comes OBJ. It's almost like a new addition. It's the only change, really, in the offense. What do you expect that he's back now? What does that bring to the offense?
I mean, he's a playmaker. I think he is ready to roll. The work he's put in this offseason has been impressive. The rehab he's done, how he's come back from that injury so quickly, that's been extremely impressive. And I think he's just ready to help this team however he can. He's still the same guy, still the same talent. It's going to be exciting to get him out there and kind of unleashing him and letting him see the things he's always been able to do.
Do you think he takes the offense to an even higher level?
Well, I think whenever you add a piece, it helps. Now, you know, one guy's not going to make or break the season, but whenever you add a piece as talented as Odell is, I mean, that's something you would much rather have than not have.
How did you see Jed get better from, you know, week 1 to week 17 his rookie year, and then how can he get even better in year 2?
Yeah, well, I mean, again, he was transitioning from right to left, so it was a quick transition with no preseason games, and he did really well at that. But this is another year in the system. another year. The offseason training left only, not worrying about right tackle at all. So again, that will continue, and I think linemen really make that big jump. Between year 1 and year 2 and years 2 and years 3, is where you see the really big jump because everything kind of slows down a little bit, and the mental side of football really catches up to you, where you start seeing things pre-snap, understanding what's coming, and knowing what the defense is going to do to you before it actually happens. That way, you're a little more expecting it than reacting to it.
Did he show you what he needed to as far as work ethic and being able to study the playbook and everything?
Yeah, and Jed's always been good about that. It's been impressive how quickly he's been able to learn everything and not be reliant on Joel for a call, but knowing where you're supposed to go and being able to communicate back and down the line. That's always been a really big quality of Jed's.
You talked about in the offseason about how much better you felt at the end of last year, mentally, physically, and now you're practicing. You weren't practicing this time a year ago. So what's your state?
Yeah, I feel really well. I feel really good. Legs feel good, body feels good, mind feels good. It was a good off season, so it's we're all ready to roll.
JC, we obviously all read your letter, and you kind of went after the NFL with misinformation, whatever you want to call it. Had that been boiling for a little while, or what kind of motivated you to finally put that down?
Yeah, I mean, I think last year it wasn't perfect, but we worked well together because we needed to, and because we needed everybody to buy in and do the right things in order to get through a season. And we saw last year it wasn't perfect, but we were able to do that. And this year, this is not going to be easy again. We're going to need to really rely on a lot of things we did last year, and that continues with being the protocols, but also the way we work together. Having sides releasing things that they know are going to drum up reactions from players that's only going to cause more confusion on how things are going to work this year, that doesn't help. And it doesn't make it easier. And again, we're both relying on each other of doing this and getting through the season. We don't want to lose checks. We want to keep people healthy. They don't want to lose revenue, and they want to keep people healthy. So we have the same goals. It's about executing that. And then with the wristband policy, it's just kind of a nonsensical idea. They say they need a differentiator between unvaccinated and vaccinated players. We already have a differentiator. The unvaccinated players need to wear masks. So, no other sports leagues use any sort of scarlet marking or helmet decal or wristband because they know it's not necessary, and the teams know who's vaccinated, who's not vaccinated. So, what it really comes down to is the NFL wanted to put a policy in place to try to shame unvaccinated players publicly about their status and make that known to everybody on the field. And that shouldn't be the case because it's unnecessary, and we all know who's vaccinated, who's not, and it doesn't need to be a scarlet marking on people's helmets or wrists.
Were the wristbands optional for each team?
It seems that way. The Browns don't need it. Again, we all know who is and who isn't. So it's not really needed, and I don't know why some teams are doing it, and I think players should ask their teams why they're doing it because, again, it's unnecessary.
JC, the vaccine, the decision whether or not to get vaccinated, unfortunately, it's polarizing, not just within the NFL, but just in society in general. So, just from your standpoint, you mentioned some of the unnecessary friction that's been created. How do you guys prevent it from becoming a divisive issue just within your own locker room?
Yeah, well, I think last year we proved that in the middle of a pandemic we can complete a season, and that's by following the protocols. The protocols got us through last year. So people talk about increased likelihood if you're not vaccinated of shutting down a season or canceling a game like that memo talked about. But what we saw last year is when you follow the protocols and do the right things, we can have a season and not need to postpone games or do anything like that. And then we believe the vaccine is safe and effective. And if you have that, you have a little different level of protocols and what you need to do. And we're still working on those. Those are going to be a continued moving target as we learn more about the Delta variant. Just like last year. Last year where we started in training camp with our protocols and where we ended were two completely different places. And to expect anything different than that would be wrong. We're going to continue to follow the science, continue to make sure we're doing everything in the best interest of keeping as many people healthy, limiting transmission, and then making sure we can play all the games and get everybody paid.
JC, you've had this president's job for more than a year. Obviously an unprecedented year. Have you enjoyed it? Do you think you've done well with it?
I'll leave the grading of myself to other people, but I have enjoyed it. Again, this is what I studied in college. It's been quite a bit of work, but I feel like it's been worthwhile, and it's something that I like doing and would like to continue doing.
Do you feel like there's a little bit of a challenge of putting on your president's hat in the legal realm?
I think that's just understanding what it's like to be in union leadership, understanding what it's like to represent everybody and not just a certain segment of players or a certain segment of people. And again, what we've tried to do as a union is really rely on the data, rely on our experts to make these decisions. And the focus is on two things: is trying to keep people as healthy and limit the transmission as much as possible, and then making sure by doing that we can play all the games and get everybody the money that they very well deserve.
JC, what is your stance? What is your stance on the league, kind of issuing that idea of forfeits, if there's outbreak among unvaccinated players?
Yeah, again, we saw a lot of the issues with postponements last year early on in the year before we really honed our protocols. Because again, if you remember, we were going with what the close contact rule was of within 6 feet for over 10 minutes. And then as we learned more throughout the season, we realized that's not the best indicator of who's at risk. You really have to look into what the interaction between the person who tested positive and the people around them. And once we figured out that, and we instituted the high-risk close contact rule of pulling those people out of the building, we really didn't have those rolling positives that we saw early in the season that were causing games to be postponed, because we knew where it was coming from. We did the interviews, we checked the footage, we looked at the Connexon devices, and we were able to get those guys out of the building. And after 5 days, we learned, based off all the tests we were taking, that 90% of positives come 5 days after the interaction with the sick individual. So when you know that, you really cut that off. And to put that memo that games are going to be postponed or canceled, or people are going to lose checks in late July when games don't start till September, seems like you're trying to cause a little bit of a panic at that point.
And
Do you think
in your column, you also addressed that you want more testing for vaccinated players. What would that look like for you ideally? Like, what would the frequency be?
We're working on that, and we've got our experts working on that. What we don't want is, with the Delta variant that's becoming more and more prevalent, I think the CDC director has touched on it now, where they're trying to figure out whether a vaccinated individual can spread the virus, especially the Delta variant. If that's the case, and we're having one test every 14 days of vaccinated individuals, that person becomes positive day 2 after the test, that person could be in the building potentially shedding the virus for 13 days. That sets us up for failure. So what we're looking for is trying to figure out the best cadence for that, and just making sure we keep people, again, if we can limit transmission, we can complete the season. So we need to look at every avenue possible to limit transmission, and be able to move through the season.
So how does that research relate to masks in the building, which the vaccinated players don't have to wear now, and even meeting in person like you guys did do a year ago?
Yeah, I mean, again, like I said, the Delta variant is something a little new. Even if you look back at where we were during minicamp or OTAs, the Delta variant has taken hold as 80% of the cases now. And that's why we continue to look at the science and continue to figure out what's the best path forward. And that's why we have a great team of internal experts, our internal medical team. We have a ton of experts from around the globe. We rely on the CDC, as well as, again, like I said, the data that we got. And we were, I think, the largest, or one of the largest testing populations of asymptomatic people last year. So we learned a lot of that information early. Because we were testing so many people and figuring out about the 90% rule and figuring out about the 5 days and all that stuff. So we're going to continue following what we've done and continue to rely on the experts we've had. Again, it wasn't perfect, but we found a lot of success last year, and we need to continue to follow the same blueprint.
How do you feel? Last one. How do you feel about the state of the Browns' vaccination rate among players?
I think it's good. Again, it's not just the vaccination rate's not going to be the be-all end-all. If there are unvaccinated players in the building, as long as they follow the protocols, we're good. So it's not a terrible vaccination rate equals disaster. As long as the protocols are followed both ways, everything's going to be fine, and that's really the focus.